to the index, I was thinking to myself, hell, there's a lot of Joseph Hayes, and I never used his last name when I talked to the group at Larry's house. So I figured, he just got somebody else. But when I went to the index, it had Joseph Adams Miltier in the index. I immediately went to the appendix. The appendix in there talked in terms of a tape-recorded conversation. And I want all your listeners to understand this. On November the 9th of 1963, approximately 2 weeks before the assassination, Joseph Adams Miltier, in a tape-recorded conversation that was done by the Miami Intelligence Police Unit, they placed a recorder in Somerset's apartment, and he was their informant, and they tape-recorded the conversation. And in that conversation, Miltier said that we're going to kill him from an office building with a high-powered rifle. And then Somerset said to him, are you sure that he said, oh, yes. He said, I'm sure it's in the works.
Well, Don, the real issue here is, and of course you've researched this, you know about it, the black Secret Service agent that knew that was coming in Chicago, so they moved it from Chicago to Dallas, and of course he said that decades ago, and then documents did come out, and then there's a deathbed confession by E. Howard Hunt, the famous black op, head of state assassin squad leader. It says, yeah, we were in Miami for the big event, and LBJ was running the big event, and I was there kind of on the sideline, and then we were going to be doing it in Chicago, but then it got moved to Dallas. I mean, we've just got it all right there.
Yeah, it's amazing. I heard about Hunt's statements and that. I've never listened to it personally, but when you start tying all the knots together and that, you're going to come up with an answer. And all this information that they had at their hands, I got none of it. I knew nothing about the ninth tape recording. I knew nothing that Miltier had been interviewed by my partner a year before in 1982 on a civil rights investigation. My partner said nothing to me about it at all. And William Elliott worked with my partner a year before that in 82, and he said nothing to me, and we worked together extensively every day doing the workup on Miltier. Now, why in the hell was this stuff kept from me? When I go back in 93, back to 93, when all this stuff started and that, I was devastated. I was totally shocked to think that my own agency, the FBI, had covered this whole thing.
Fletcher Prouty, who himself was the main liaison between the Pentagon and CIA Black Ops, he got literally, sent away to the North Pole so that he wouldn't be there when all this happened. And he explained how they use mafia, they use hitmen, they use right-wing veterans, and they had all these different teams, including more teams down the road if Kennedy would have escaped. Now they have just multiple hit teams ready to deal with it. They even had the military in the air above Dallas in case the public found out and things had to be suppressed. They had the corrupt, mafia-controlled Dallas Police Department all hooked up, heavily involved with intelligence. And it's just absolutely incredible that you were there, you tried to stop it, you were on the job, and then decades later, they declassify and release the fact that this guy was talking about killing him and where and how and when, before and after. I mean, this is incredible.
Alex, let me mention one thing to you that's very important. After we went into the archives in 99, or no, it was later than that. It was in 2003 or something like that. We went into the archives and pulled the documents in that. I found a document in there that said in there that they contacted, that the Atlanta office had contacted their agent in Thomasville, and he told them that Miltier was in Quitman, Georgia, at the time the assassination took place. And that was an outright lie, and it's a totally fraudulent document. The document was done, and the words were said, but it was not true. And my partner was the only one that was there, and I left him saying I was going to find Miltier. I was going to locate him if I could, and which we did. I checked him in the morning and at noon at night, and here he, at some time, or somebody saying that he did it, said that that Miltier was in Quitman, Georgia, at the time of the assassination. There, in that book, High Treason, is a photograph of Miltier standing there looking at the presidential limousine moments before the president was killed.
That's right. I interrupted you, Agent Adams, before you got to that. So recap. You get this book, you open it up, and there he is, clear as day, looking at the president in the motorcade. Talk about that.
Sure. I mean, you can imagine when you investigate a person and you do a full background on him, and I walked up to him, like I said, and I took all this hate literature from him, which he was freely giving out in that. I spent a lot of time with this guy, and then when I finally took him into custody and took him back for interview and everything on the 27th, there was a lot of time together, and I know him 100%. And when I saw that photograph, it hit me like you said, like a stack of bricks hit me, and it just it blew my mind. I couldn't believe it. That here he is, because I couldn't locate him, and then I found out afterwards that on the same morning, on November the 22nd at 10 o'clock in the morning, before he was photographed there on Houston Street, he made a telephone call to Somerset in Miami and told him, "I'm in Jackrabbit Country. Your friend is coming here, and you're not going to see him again." And then when I said, or you mentioned later on that Miltier was jubilant over it, he was. When he met with Somerset the following day after the assassination at the Jacksonville, Florida railroad station, he told him, he said, I told you I wasn't kidding. You thought I was kidding in that, but it was taken care of, just like I said it would be. So here is this guy very heavily involved, and they take everything away from him and bury him into the archives and concentrate everything on Oswald, and Oswald never even fired a shot. A meeting that took place in Indianapolis, and that Miltier was really the spokesman, and Somerset was the informant, and then one of the other two persons was a sniper in the Second World War. And he said that he was willing to go up into the tree and give his life in that to take Kennedy out.
Amazing. So who was Joseph Adams Miltier? Because the news reported he was a really violent guy.
Well, it said in a report in that book in High Treason, said he was one of the most violent men in the country. Here's another thing about it. My partner, who had investigated me a year before, said nothing to me about him ever being armed. And one of the most stringent rules that we have in the FBI is if you develop any information where there's a possibility of an agent getting harmed or hurt or killed, it's mandatory that you immediately put a caution out on the man and underline it in every single communication that you put out. And I knew nothing about him being armed. After I left, then he wrote a report in January of '64, and in that report, under the synopsis, he put in there that Miltier should be considered armed and dangerous because he has a .38 weapon with him. And I knew nothing about that. So here's my partner did everything he could against every proper bureau rule to protect me and the chief and everybody else. And they got rid of every bit of that information and gave none of it to me.
Whatever happened to Miltier?
Miltier had an explosion of a gas stove in his house, and the early reports were that he got killed because of that. But then I read subsequent reports after that, which said that he was burnt just slightly from the explosion of the gas, the stove, and that he was fine after that. He had been released by the hospital. They said there was nothing wrong with him, other than having the minor burns and that to be treated.
So you got the good ground floor FBI people and police and others trying to stop this, but up high, they blocked the investigation, they covered it up. And that was my next question. I had read that you had said that once you got into the archives, decades after, when they finally released this stuff, that your own FBI reports had been doctored.
What happened, my report doesn't exist. I mean, they eliminated the total report that I wrote up, and my partner, Royal McGraw, and a supervisor by the name of Charles Harding up in Atlanta, Georgia, they wrote two reports. One written by McGraw and one written by Charles Hardy. And they took the material of all the people that I contacted and interviewed, trying to locate Miltier and doing a full background on him, education-wise, and where he worked, and all the stuff that we had acquired in that. All of that was in their reports. The only thing that was in that report that had anything to do with Don Adams was that one sheet of paper of my interview of Miltier.
Well, sir, isn't the evidence of the cover-up, just more proof? I mean, look at how many people that witnessed the shooters on the grassy knoll, the green pickup truck. How many of them were murdered, killed, disappeared?
Over 300. I mean, there's been a novel written about and discussing solely the people that were involved in the Kennedy assassination, and they say that number is over 300 people now. And I just want to mention one thing that I don't want to forget to tell you, is that when I saw the Zapruder film, and I made that comment, hell, he wasn't shot from the back, he was shot from the front when he put his hands up to his throat in that. Dr. Charles Crenshaw, who worked in trauma room 1 at Dallas Parkland Hospital, and that, as soon as he looked at the president, he said, hell, he's been shot in the throat, he's got a bullet hole here. And then later on, they had to do a trach cut on him to open up his throat to put a tracheotomy in him. But he saw the bullet hole right away. There was no exit wound in the back. Then they found where the bullet had gone through the windshield of the limousine, and apparently that slowed down the projectile so it didn't go all the way through him, and it went into his throat and stayed in his body.
Yeah, that was in the original medical report, and then they had his brain at the National Archives, and then it got disappeared.
It disappeared, right.
In closing, sir, and I want to have you back up in the next month for a full hour with your great breadth of knowledge. We appreciate your patriotism, your love of the truth, and your courage. Knowing how many people they've murdered, do you ever get threatened? Or are you concerned that you're now really going public?
No, I'm going to tell you something, Alex. I've always said this. The good Lord picked me for this assignment, whatever it was. I mean, whatever it is. And if he decides he's going to call me, I'm going to go the way he wants, and I don't worry about that stuff.
And I would imagine you really learned that when you were in Korea.
Yes, I did. Yeah, I saw a lot there, and it was a heavy year. Went all the way to the Yellow River up to China. And it was an experience I never forgot, but it's something that taught me a great deal about life and how important life is.
You know who else was on the Yalu River but fighting the Japanese during World War II? E. Howard Hunt as a sniper.
Wow. Yeah, see, let me tell you something, Alex, so that you're aware of how I work in that. When I get to concentrating on my work in that, I don't dwell off into a lot of other people's work, because you could just go in forever and not really get the story. So I'm really concentrating to make the people aware of who Joseph Adams Miltier is. And that...
no, I agree with you, because your area of the investigation is conclusive. I mean, it's amazing. The website is adamsjfk.com. And let me say bye to you during the break. I look forward to setting you up for a full hour in the next month. In fact, we'll try to set that up with you right now, sir. Everybody check out his website. He's got some very informative DVDs with his testimony that's an important part of a historical record.